from Ringland Primary School this afternoon to share their journey to writing. Becky, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to. Really, I'm going to be just. I'll tell you a little bit about myself before we get going. So, if I seem a little bit clunky today, it probably is because I am. I'm currently still on maternity after having my second son. So I'm not due back for another month yet. So this has been a real nice opportunity for me actually to be back in school, see everybody, kind of get my head back into the zone a little bit. And to be able to present this to you today. So bit of context, when I went off, I was the year 2 teacher here. I'm just coming up to my 10th year at Ringland. I am returning as a reception teacher, which I'm really excited about. And I'll also be our new literacy lead when we return. So our old literacy lead was Dawn Robertson, who was also our deputy head. She's just retired now at the end of April. So literally she's living the best life traveling the world now. So, but yeah, that's just a little bit about me. So I, like I said, new to this role, but have been part of this journey since we've started it really, and it has been a journey. Children at our school, as every school, differ year on year, and depending on kind of the cohorts of children we have, has depicted this journey really, and the journey has looked very different every year, but we are kind of finding a little bit of stability as we go through, and it's been trial and error. Things have worked, things haven't, and it's good that we've been able to reflect on things, and I think that's kind of what's helped us get to kind of where we are now. So so this is our journey to writing at Ringland. So I'll just share our vision with you. And our vision is we strive to nurture our Ringland writers to be confident, creative and fluent communicators. We'll provide children with exciting, purposeful and inspiring reasons to write. And we aim to create passion for writing and create an environment where children can identify themselves as writers. So this is about them having their ownership and for them to feel empowered actually that what they can do as a person is actually on them, and that we're there to just guide them and nurture them through that journey really. Before I do go through the slides, please feel free to interrupt as we go along. I'm not precious about timings. If you need to stop me and ask questions in the moment, absolutely fine. Very happy to do that. So just a little bit about us. So I'm sure many of you may know some things about us, but Ringland Primary is in the Lamworn area of Newport, and it's an area of high deprivation. We currently have 225 pupils on roll, including 23 who attend the nursery on a part-time basis. We currently only have a morning nursery. We currently have 8 classes from reception to year 6. Approximately 49.3% of learners are eligible for free school meals, and this is well above the national average of 25%. So we've got 2 local authority resource-based classes at our school and 3 nurture classes, which do change year on year. Our nurture classes depend on the children we have that year really, and kind of if they need that kind of time out of class. And therefore our most vulnerable learners really. Ringland identifies at almost 50% of pupils having ALN needs, and this is well above the national average of 11.2%. 6% of pupils have English as an additional language. It's relatively low, and our average ACEs data suggests that 38% of our pupils have 1 or more ACEs, but that's just what we know, and the likelihood of that percentage being higher could be possible. Our school was last inspected in January 2020, and we had a new head teacher join, Tavis Pruitt, in September of 2022. So a lot has changed naturally since that change of leadership as well. So yeah, so some development points. So these development points have been taken from a little bit from our last inspection, and they've been on our SIP rolling in different capacities. But these development points have also come from new leadership as well, and not just with our new head teacher, but other roles, deputy heads. Obviously, we've had a change of deputy head, and other sort of roles in literacy, maths. Everything's kind of changed since our head has joined us. So we've honed in on 4 development points in particular that we wanted to kind of focus on to help develop our journey to those capable writers. So that was to consider reviewing the text that we use to ensure that the most appropriate hook and the balance of fiction and non-fiction are carefully planned for across the school. We found that upon reviewing a lot of what the text that we used, some were being reused. So, we might have done BGU in year 1 and then it might have been picked up again in year 3. With that, as we know, children becoming disengaged because they've done it before. The hooks perhaps weren't hitting the same, they weren't as punchy and they were not as kind of exciting because they knew what was coming. So we had to make sure that we had that coverage, and we had to make sure that we could find some form of plan to make sure that we were getting that fiction, non-fiction and good hooks in place, which I will come to. We also had to consider revisiting the language of learning when teaching to enable pupils to be able to better talk about their work. So with that, it's just about reflection opportunities. We needed the children to know what we were talking about when we use specific language with them, for them to be able to develop their own sort of communication skills about their learning. So we give them a lot of time for reflection. We do a lot of peer assessment and self-assessment as well as giving them just time to review and edit their work as well, to enable them to become just sort of fluent writers and sort of just workers in their own right, really, which I will come to also. And as a school, we provided staff training in response to ensuring consistency in a progressive build-up to writing. So lots of professional learners been focused on our journey to writing. We've had, staff have gone out on their own sort of professional, like yourselves today, gone out on professional visits and come back and kind of shared good practice with us when they've been magpieing from lovely schools. And we've kind of used that where we've needed to. So our journey has been a journey because we haven't had, it hasn't been written in black and white before we started. We've had to try things and see what works for our children here at Ringland, and we've kept the good bits and kept the bad bits that we didn't need. So, and then, in relation to that, then our deputy head, who's now lovingly retired, shared the best practice across the school from feedback and to ensure that we had consistency. So our aims, we put our aims down to 2 aims for us at Ringland, and that was to redefine and develop Ringland's writing pedagogy across all phases from progression step 1 to 3, and to ensure a consistent whole school progressive approach in planning a sequence for extended writing. So we know that we can't just expect our children to sit and write a big bulk of writing. There has to be a lead up, there has to be a journey, just like to get to any sort of destination. And for us, it was, what steps are we going to put in place to enable them to get to that final destination, to have that big wow, punchy final piece. And actually, it's on our SIP is to improve the standards of writing by embedding consistent whole school approach to the teaching of writing, with a specific focus on the process and the build up to the extended writing journey. So that has been a big focus for us, and over numerous years, but especially as now, it's still on our SIP. So we had to ask ourselves questions, and this is I have been off for this year, so I feel a little bit like a fraud saying we've got together and we've talked about this, but I have been here as part of this journey before I went off on maternity, and a lot of our progression step meetings and a lot of our professional learning time has been on this writing journey, and it's encompassed a lot of what we do here. It's part of how our classrooms look. It's part of what strategies we put in place for the children, as part of our teaching, our planning, the resources and scaffolds we give children. It's everything. And it's with having that so stable in our literacy sessions, we've been able to start rolling that out into topic also, so that we're seeing that kind of the build up to a process and the build up to a final piece, that process kind of rolling out into other areas. So we asked ourselves, how do we all consistently support learners to create a piece of extended writing across the school? So was that looking the same in reception to year 6? No. But what was in place to ensure they were still making that journey in their own right at their age and their stage that they were at? Do we have a consistent approach in planning for a writing sequence from progression step 1 to 3? So at the time, no. Again, this has been a journey in itself, how we plan. So our planning, which I'll show some examples of, can sometimes surprise a lot of people, but it is really useful for us here, because actually, what's the planning for? The planning is for us to know what we're doing, and as long as we know what we're doing, and that's we can spend a lot of our time there making sure that those children are making progress. So that's been kind of like a journey for us personally, I'd say, to make sure that that planning has been useful for us. Also, how progressive are our writing approaches across the whole school for each progression step? What consistent pedagogy do we use to support our young writers here at Ringland? And how do we all choose the literature that we use as a stimulus to engage our writer's journey? So as previously mentioned, I'll come to the coverage and why we've decided on certain texts, and how we ensure to have that balance between fiction and non-fiction, and also good rich text to really engage children that, again, they may never see, but also without redoing them year on year, so that we keep them engaged as well. So these were our steps to success that we came up with. So there are 10 puzzle pieces here, and we think of our puzzle pieces as separate pieces in their own right, and together they come together to create a final picture, a product. You'll see that the hook puzzle piece is our biggest one, and that's almost our commitment here at Ringland, that we always start with that. The hook is what will engage the children. The hook is what will excite them, make them feel something. It will give them an emotive response to something that will want them to learn more. So it's almost unquestionable that we always start with that hook to get them interested. But then in terms of the other puzzle pieces, we haven't put them in an order because they might not be in that order for everybody. Some texts will lend themselves really naturally to certain activities. Some may not need them. Some might need 2 or 3 of them in a row before you can bounce to the next one. So what we've done is we've left them really open, because this keeps our teaching, our planning and teaching flexible for us, and also gives us that coverage and makes us more aware, I'd say, of if we're doing a text and we perhaps haven't covered something, we can then make sure we're looking at that next time to build on those skills for the children, to make sure they have an opportunity to progress in those specific skills also. So like I said, we always start with a hook, and our other puzzle pieces are a reading response, oracy opportunities, word collection, grammar and punctuation, planning for the writing stage, editing and reviewing, peer marking, models and shared writing, and then this one down the bottom is big read, so analysing the text. So I'll briefly touch upon big read and the big read characters when we get to that. So these steps of success are clear, achievable stages that help develop ideas and skills, enabling students to confidently create a finished piece of writing. So as promised, we always start with our hook. Now, like I said, our hook is our interesting part of our topic. The hook is, I'd say, one of the most fun days of introducing a new text. And when I say text, I mean, it could be anything. It could be a moving image, it could be a piece of music, it could be a feeling, it could be a letter, it could be a picture, it could be a prop, a puppet. The hook is something you need those children to walk into on that Monday morning and go, oh, what on earth is going on? You know, to get them just really interested and to almost not want them to think about anything else. So a few examples we've had in the past are just letters. They've come into a mysterious letter. They've come into a puppet sat on the table. They may have come into alien footprints leading from the classroom into a cupboard. There could be a mysterious suitcase that the teacher hasn't addressed for 4 hours, and all of a sudden at 2 o'clock in the afternoon she's going to start talking about it. It could be anything that you think is going to interest them. Some bigger stage productions, I'd say, we've had a big spaceship crash on the field. Lots of tinfoil was used that day. And it could be anything, and it could just be something that keeps reoccurring. Like there could be one teacher did like this little badge or this little logo kept appearing around the school, and every time they saw it, she would go, why does that keep appearing? I don't understand. And it just really kept the children engaged to the point where they started looking for them and they wanted to find out what it was. And that's exactly how you need the children to feel. They need to be feeling something to be able to be interested in and do further with it. So, and it's an engaging experience, a stimulus or an activity designed to capture people's interest and immerse them in a topic, text or idea before learning begins. So just some examples here are some pictures of images that we've had, some drama opportunities here, and a letter. I think this one in particular was from Spark the Dragon, from the book A Home for Spark the Dragon by Michael Sheen. yeah, and then, like I said, it could be a piece of music to interest them as well. From that hook, which could last at Ringland, it's lasted a day sometimes, depends how interested the children are and how much you want to try and to keep them on the edge of their seat. We try and then get questions from them in terms of which direction they want the learning to go. So although as teachers, we will have something in our mind. We know that we have to have the skill coverage. We know that we need children to practice certain skills, but actually how they get there, sometimes we can give them that flexibility, and pupil voice is very important. So we want them to have ownership over which direction their learning goes in. And that comes from their questioning. So you see some examples here. This one here we tend to use a little bit lower down the school in progression step 1. And this is where we're just really introducing those question words to them and what they mean. So knowing that a who question would be related to a person, you're asking something about somebody, and like a what would be about an object. And it does then progress up into progression step 2, 3 with more of a question matrix, and then getting them to formulate their own questions by using that. And then we also have some visual support that we use for pupils that need it also. These questions will be gathered in their book in different ways. It could just be that we've captured this on Seesaw. It could be that the first image you saw, perhaps of this little tree house here, this would give me, oh gosh, dozens of questions I could ask about this without having any other context to it. Who lives here? Why are the trees orange and yellow? Why is the staircase winding around that tree? Why can't I see anything underneath it? How high up in the sky is this tree house? These are the kinds of questions that we want these children to be asking, because from these questions, we can formulate a plan to kind of where we lead their learning. So that's been really useful for us. And we have recently updated, I've been told, this question matrix to more of like a graph template, so that it's kind of a bit more progressive. But I can imagine lots of schools are very familiar with this matrix anyway. So that was the hook. Moving on. Like I said, the next couple of slides I've put in an order that may seem satisfactory from a hook, but again, these can be in any order from here, really, how you see fit. And it could be that a reading response, for example, may come a little bit later down the line. It may be that you do a reading response as part of your hook. So there is a lot of flexibility with this. So in terms of a reading response, it's a task or an activity in which pupils reflect on, interpret, analyse or react to a text to demonstrate and deepen their understanding of what they have read. Using read there as a loose term. So read, seen, heard, watched, felt. It's their response to it or their reaction to something. So I put a couple of examples here from year 3. This is there was an image here again from, I think this was from Spark the Dragon, I could be wrong, where they've just been given this scaffold of I see and I wonder. We do a lot of Voice 21 at our school also. So these terms, I see, I wonder, in my opinion, I think that, I wonder if, what if. These are obviously stemming from the questioning, but we'll also give them kind of a structure to their response. So, I wonder if the dragon is scared. I wonder if this. Year 1 here have used more visual prompts here, I'd say, of I wonder, and then they've got their question prompts here. So I wonder where, I wonder when, I wonder if, I wonder who, and then they've written in these clouds then their questions from that scaffold about the image or music or whatever it is that's been their hook. And then here's an example here from year 2 where they've done something very similar. I see, I feel, and it's just been sort of categorized a little bit different. So these reading responses would be documented in their books. Again, it could be a reading response could be documented on Seesaw. It could be that they've talked over an image, especially with differentiation in the classroom. We know that not all children are going to be capable and ready to do this straight away, especially sort of in early years at the beginning of the year. It might be that you've popped an image onto Seesaw and they've used the microphone tool to ask these questions. They're still hitting those skills of that questioning. Like at this point, is this if they are writing it down, great, this is their journey to writing, but actually they're still going through the process by speaking, because we know that oracy is still a big part of the writing process, and which comes on to oracy, so that lends itself well. So yeah, some oracy opportunities. We always give children here at Ringland a lot of opportunity to speak. A lot of our children come in with really poor oracy skills when they start with us, and confidence can be a big issue with all children, as we know. So I think all children need opportunities to speak, and Seesaw is a great tool for that, because we can have children go off into the book corner by themselves and they can showcase what they've learned and what they've understood, and actually without an audience, because at that point they're not at that stage perhaps where they want to showcase to a huge audience, but they still know what they're thinking. And actually that's still really important for us as teachers, that we can assess that and that we can see that. So actually I'm still satisfied if somebody's come to me with a recording from the book corner, and they've recorded all their questioning and their thinking from an image, even if they haven't done it in front of everyone. It's still a great purposeful activity for them to do. So I've kind of differentiated this slightly between kind of lower down the school and more upper school. So we define RC opportunities as a chance to develop speaking, listening, discussion and communication skills through purposeful talk and interaction. So we play a few games, and these games are part and parcel of every day. It's not just in a literacy activity. So we do freeze framing, where I'm sure everybody, if you're acting out a scene from a book perhaps, and we freeze and we can talk about what we're seeing. We do magic box, so where we can, again, I suppose it's more similar to the hook idea of a suitcase being in the room, what's in the box, and that generates a lot of speaking opportunity as well. Emotion charades, so actually this lends really well with our jigsaw journey at our school of showcasing how we get children to express themselves, and how our nurturing kind of well-being journey as well. Emotion charades, getting children to understand different feelings and how people's body language and persona can convey a feeling as well. Talking objects, so this one's always really fun, where you know, if there's a footprint there, if that footprint could speak right now, what would that footprint say? And they go, well, the footprint can't speak. and it's getting them to kind of just be a bit whimsical and fun with it, and say, well, if it could, what would it say? Oh, well, I'm the footprint of a big monster, and that monster ran through that mud, and the mud came all into our classroom. And we really want to develop that imagination and just that creativity, just through those kind of games. And talking puppets, again, we use puppets a lot at Ringland, for role play opportunities as well. We use it for restorative, at things outside of literacy as well, and they're really good to build confidence in children to speak through a puppet, because it's not them speaking. So that's a really good opportunity for them as well. And here's just some examples. So you can see here, this was reception, I think it was a reception class. Yeah, excuse me. Where they're just using puppets here to talk through the story and just role play, and they've got masks. And this one here was a year 2 child, and she was using all I wonder if, I wonder where, I wonder why. And she's just documented it down here, but this was a seesaw activity as well. So she's had this image of the Smeds and the Smooths, and she's recorded these questions over this image. And from that, she has then taken herself off and written these in her book independently, because she's used that oracy opportunity to scaffold her understanding of it, and then she's able to use that then to produce that piece of writing. So yeah, and then just an example here of progression step 3. So here's a little bit of this is Rose Blanche, and just again, just some questions of why, I wonder if, but just obviously you can see the content is a little bit thicker, and I'd say it's just a little bit more mature in how they've asked questions. Some ideas of games and drama activities we've done as problem solving. So we've done some role play activities where there's a problem has come up, and together the class will perhaps take different roles in that and try and get to the bottom of perhaps what the situation is, what the drama is in that activity. We've also done improvisation, which is it's actually really tricky improv to do. And actually, I think that's more of a a very high level kind of drama skill when children are very confident to be able to go off and to use their creativity and imagination to come up with an idea or an ending or a prediction themselves. Gadair Bwyth, so hot seating. Again, this is used lower down the school as well. So, you know, a dragon's in the classroom. Right, sit down, Mr. Dragon. We've got some questions to ask you. And just kind of, again, just helps develop their kind of thinking skills. Conscience Alley is a real popular one, especially up year 5 and 6, especially with a dilemma or a debate or conflicting idea, is having 2 rows of children, splitting your class in half, having half down one side, half the other, and you as the focus, who's having this conflicting idea, to walk down the centre. And this side are telling you one thing and this side are telling you the other, and you're taking in all those ideas, and by the end, what are you going to do? That you've had all this from one side and all this from the other, and it's teaching them about conflict, and it's teaching them that about making their own decisions, coming to agreements, and that's always a really powerful one, I think. And debate is great across the school. I've done debate with year 1s before, with Bigu. Can Bigu stay here on planet Earth, or do we need to send her back? And you've got the real sort of emotional ones, like, keep her here, we'll look after her, we'll feed her. And then the other's like, but she'll miss her mum, send her back. And so they're always good fun as well. And so before I play this is just an example of a year 1 class. It's only a minute and a half long, I think, so I will play it all for you. And it's just a lovely example of talk for writing. So I'm not going to go too deep into talk for writing today, but it's just another strand of oracy that we've built on that will help feed into their writing later down the line. When I talk about those puzzle pieces not fitting together in a specific order, this can also be a plan, a writing plan, especially lower down the school. These children have rehearsed a story map so well that they've been able to perform it through Talk for Writing, the Talk for Writing strategies from Pi Corbett. And what's happened then is they are then able to, they know this story so well that they can write that down with support. And, you know, we know that that story might sound exactly the same in everyone's books, but then where we push that on then is where we start innovating, just as the Talk for Writing scheme suggests. And that's where we can start dropping in some of their own creativity then once they're really established in their understanding of the story. So enjoy, they're very cute and lovely.
Once upon a time, in a quiet supermarket, everything was calm until crash! Something small and green had escaped from the freezer. Ah! Cried the carrot. Ah! Cried the broccoli. Cried the cucumber. Sweet potato to the rescue! First, he used the super speed. Next, he used his super strength to save the vegetables. Baby, I know who's behind the head sweet potato. Let's see on the loose. Be Finally, you can take to a trap that people pee in the drain. Sweet potato saved the day. 4-leaf clover, my story is over.
Cuties. Yeah, it's lovely, and you know, that's part of the process of planning the story as well. So the children will be really heavily involved in that plan. They'll be part of creating the images, and they'll come up and write, draw little pictures, and those pictures will be linked to an action, so that once they see that image, they know that what action comes with that, which then prompts the oracy. So it's always good fun, and we always kind of dedicate, you know, a day, 2 days, 3 if it needs it, if they're really enjoying it and if they really need it. And then following that, then we pick up another puzzle piece. You know, do they need then some word collection? But especially lower down the school, that we would probably do that just before their final, right? So that it's really fresh in their heads. So yeah, so big read. I'm going to move on to analysing the text. This is another part of another puzzle piece of our journey. So big read at our school is a huge part of our guided reading sessions, and we use the 4 characters consistently through the school, and we have done for a few years, and it's now becoming really useful in literacy, and rightly so. You know, guided reading, those skills transfer over, and it helps kind of focus everybody on what we're trying to get out of that piece of work. So if you're not familiar with the big read characters, this is Rex. He's a retriever, and he finds facts, details and answers directly inside the text. So what we say to the children is, you are going to be Rex the dog and you're going to retrieve. So we say you've got to dig for information, and if we're saying, right, you need to find it, go find it like you're finding a bone. And you know, it's funny when you see them kind of, right, we've got to find this, and they go in the books trying to, you know, and that's great. You know, if they need to do that to kind of remind them what that skill means, then great. Rex is one of those skills. It's a lower order skill, so we would expect all children to be doing that. Nursery and reception children would also be kind of doing Rex retrieval as well, but early stages. We then move on to Exby. So this is Exby, he's the explorer, and Exby explores and deduces the meanings of new or difficult vocabulary. So this is more about the words that are being used. So for example, if an author used the word frightful, frightening, or gracefully, or you know, daunting, why is that word being used? You know, why not scared? Why not? And it's getting them to kind of understand and just to build on their vocabulary with that one. This is Anza. So Anza's the analyzer, and Anza breaks down the author's structure, themes and deeper meanings. So this one is kind of understanding how work is put together. So if you've got a letter, what's the composition of a letter? You know, analysing different parts of that, analysing what's being said to kind of build meaning. And you can see as you go up, these skills are getting a little bit trickier. So we wouldn't expect really Anza to be being used in reception at all, even our year 1. We would expect this as progressively throughout the school, these children are starting to use these skills more confidently. And then we get to Dude. And Dude is the detective, and he looks for clues to make inferences and predictions about what will happen next. And the reason this one is the trickiest one, I suppose, is because it's very abstract. You're getting children to kind of think outside of the black and white, and getting children to kind of make their own kind of assumptions from what they've read, reading between the lines, if you will. So we've incorporated this into our literacy, like I said, from years of using this in guided reading. So I think staff were very confident using these characters, and that's great. And because of that, we see some good success in their literacy. So just an example here, you can see where this letter here has been sort of analysed and explored, and sometimes these characters can overlap as well. So a bit of Exby, a bit of Anza, and what they've done, as you can see, is they've labelled parts of the letter here. So they're understanding the structure of a letter and what comprises a letter and what they need to make that letter successful. And then here, this is more of a Rex retrieval. So they've read a passage here, and then they've had some questions. So what they've had to do is go through and dig for the answers, and they've had to then put them into their own way, into their own words. And we always encourage full sentences, because the amount of children, even up for the school, where did Spark go on his journey? Japan, instead of, and we always encourage that kind of extension of Spark went on his journey to. And then here's a year 6 example. You can see it's a little bit more detailed, where they've had to find different features of the text, and it's all been color coded just to kind of give it that complexity of kind of looking for specific things and differentiating between the colors and difference in sort of vocabulary. And this is Exby here, where they've explored the different language, and a couple of skills here they've underlined obviously when they found it, and then they've obviously created their own phrase boxes here to help them on the next stage of their writing. So these puzzle pieces, as you can see, will start forming bulk in their books, so that it's starting to form little snippets of things that they're going to need to get to their final piece. So our next puzzle piece is the word collection. So we define it as a vocabulary gathered to support language development, to deeper understanding, and to encourage the use of ambitious or topic-specific words. So this could be through lots of different ways. Again, going back to the drama and the RSC opportunities, we might do some sort of if objects could talk, and we would start using those objects to describe ourselves and to find adjectives. It could be describing how somebody's moved, and we'd be doing a lot of drama with the children, because it really is, especially at Ringland, it's a real strength to getting the children engaged with us. And if we can get them up and moving, so they're not sat at desks, they're not sat on the carpet just looking at a screen for 20 minutes, they're up, they're doing something, and they're engaging with each other and building their vocabulary with their friends. So just a few examples of how this has looked in books. This is a year 1 activity here where they've obviously been given these examples here. They've done some sort of drama piece here where they've been up and about, and they've got the swaying trees, and they've got different small colours, flowers, and they've obviously compared the 2 different imagery there, and then acted it out. So it gives them kind of something to hook on to then. Oh, I remember the swaying trees. The swaying trees went like this because they've had experience of doing it, and that kind of creates that picture for them then. This is a year 4 example here, so a little bit more complex again. They've done a similar thing, but here we've got the content, so we've got more. So we've got the sentences here that they've generated from these images, and they've got a lot more. So when they come to their final piece, as expected with the progression of the steps, they're having more choice to choose from, and they're having more opportunities to extend their writing through conjunctions and things by having numerous different sentences to choose from. And this is a year 6 example. So they've compared, excuse me, compared words this time, and then either used a thesaurus or gone through the book and used Rex retrievals to find different words to explain the same thing. And then from that, then they've created sentences that they have banked essentially to use again later on their next stage of their little writing journey. And there's just some more examples here. So again, the use of imagery is really important. You know, if they've got, and I know we use the hook at the beginning of a new literacy piece, I'll say, they're so important to have throughout as well. So if you're trying to get specific vocabulary about a certain image, just give them the image, whether it's huge on your screen or whether it's just a little picture in their book, because it will be so helpful. And then they've obviously categorized their words here in year 2, from nouns to verbs. You can see how it's progressed here a little bit in year 4. So why? So they need to check the map so you don't get lost. So they're linking why they have that vocabulary and what the vocabulary does. And then here in year 6, you've just got different words again, almost just different synonyms for the same words, just so they can use on their next step. Okay, so the planning for the writing stage. So our plans, like previously mentioned with the Talk for Writing video, could come at any stage really, but generally you'll find the plan for the writing will come after they've done a lot of the bulk of getting their vocabulary, understanding what they should be writing. They've analysed and explored any structure of what their final piece is going to look like. So if we know that their final piece is going to be a letter, we would expect them to have analysed and explored a letter so that they know what's expected of a letter. And it's not the first time they're seeing it, is when they're writing one. But generally the final plan will be just before they've started writing. So here's just some examples. You can see this first picture here is a real fun one. Actually, this is probably from a Talk for Writing. Excuse me. This is from a Talk for Writing story map where they've walked it, and it's really powerful walking a story map as opposed to just following it with your eyes. With smaller children, obviously we know bigger is great, and actually letting them step into that role more than just tracking it with their eyes can be really good. So we've had our reception children just walk up a long piece of paper. We've drawn the story map. They've drawn the pictures with us. It's their story map. They've got ownership of it. They're proud of it. And you ask them to show it to you then, and they're really proud to do so. By this point, we would have expected that rehearsal of the Talk for Writing. and then they'll walk up their story map and tell us the story. So that's one plan that they could do. Here's another 2 examples. So here's an example of a story map that perhaps we would expect in year 1, 2. And that's more of like a personal one, as not a class collaborative project, but more one child's story map there. And that's the progression we would expect, really, is going from a group story map to individual ones. Some possibilities of challenge from that is when it comes to innovating their story. So we don't want 30 children to have 30 identical stories, is that we would challenge our aspirational learners, so MAT children, to innovate. So using post-it notes, they could, pop a post-it note over Super Potato in this instance, and they could change the character. So we would just expect them on their little post-it note to change Super Potato to a Super Carrot, or a Super Swede, whatever they wanted to do, pop it on top of the potato, because they don't need that potato. That's what we say to them. You cover it, you don't need that potato. Potato doesn't exist in your story, your carrot does. So wherever that potato appears in their story map, they'll replace it. So that's first stages of innovating. That's where they've used their own ideas. Just up in the corner here is an example of just a plan. We would use this more as a scaffold for younger children to kind of get their ideas, but this will definitely be filled in more in sort of progression step 2 and 3. And here's just an example here of a year 6 plan. So they've got their ideas together of from the picture of what they need to be covering, and they've written down their ideas really ready to go into their final piece. Final pieces. I'm just going to have a little bit of water, a little tickle. Please feel free to have a look at those. So the final pieces, it doesn't mean the journey's finished. This is just kind of the start of the finish. So by the time they've got here, we would expect children to feel really confident in what they're going to write, but have scaffolds in place for those that are unsure. So we wouldn't just leave them to it. They still have support, and they still have scaffolds, they can still have visuals, and the biggest tool we encourage is for them to use their books. So the reason they are writing their books, it's not for us, it's not to kind of show off what they've done, even though it's so lovely and they should be proud of it. It's a tool for them. So actually what they've already done is the hard work, and that's their tool. So where they've done their word collection, that you need that. So actually encouraging them and teaching them to flit back through their books is really strongly encouraged. And actually a lot of children find it difficult. And, I've had an experience where I've used coloured stickers to, a pink one for word collection, and then I've flitted through to this is where your word collection will go in your final piece, and pop in their pink sticker there so that they know pink here, I need to be including some work from my word collection here. Flick, 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 find it, use it. It's their work. And I think a lot of children have this belief that they're copying, but it's their work, it's nobody else's. So I think we're still on that journey of encouraging the independence with that, but definitely the children are getting there. So here's a year 1 example of a final letter. So again, this letter wouldn't have been done without seeing a letter, exploring a letter, understanding what makes up a letter. It wouldn't have been completed without word collection. They wouldn't have found the words. They wouldn't have been able to do it without having a response to their text or to their stimulus. And it wouldn't have been done without some oracy and some drama. And that's all then been showcased in their final letter. Again, this is a year 4 example. This one's been digitalized, so this one's been typed up. Again, a great skill on our journey to writing, encouraged. And this has been, again, done. It wouldn't have been done without a hook. It wouldn't have been done without word collection and all that vocabulary building and oracy. And again, here's just another example of just a lovely piece from year 6 that they've done. And you can just see that the content just, it just becomes a little bit bulkier as they go up. Yeah, so like I said, the final piece isn't the end. We do really strongly encourage self-assessment. And just a little example, if I flick back, we are encouraging this miss a line especially in year 5, 6. Missing a line gives them that little bit of flexibility and that little bit of freedom to go back. So actually when they've got a real thick piece of writing, it gives them that kind of autonomy to go, right, I've done a great job, but actually could I have done any more? And giving them those lines in between allows them to go through and go, right, I've used the word sad there, but actually from my word collection, I've also got terrified, I've also got frightened, I've also got nervous. Could I have changed that word sad to have made it just a little bit more interesting? And it gives them that opportunity to go, oh, I'm just going to change that word just to make it sound a little bit more interesting. Again, it gives them some opportunity for punctuation and grammar, so they can go through and revise and review that before they've gone to a teacher. Again, just developing independence and just autonomy for their own work, really. And then we also are on a bit of a journey with peer marking. This peer marking is very, we're still on a real big journey with peer marking. It is part of our writing journey, but it's something that the children still find they need to have guidance with. So you can't just leave children to peer mark and just hope for the best. This saying here, process of peer marking is taught, not caught. Talking about somebody's work is not the same as peer assessing it, even though they are commenting on it. So it's kind of making sure it's in a structured way. So this is just an example of in year 6 here, and year 6 have been given 5 post-it notes with pre-approved kind of questions on it from the teacher of what they're looking for in their friend's work. And it could be just, what have they done well? What improvement points would you give? Have they met the success criteria? It could be, a variety of questions. And then the children will circulate, and it could be done in a carousel. At the moment in year 6, it can be done as a carousel system. So they'll have a group's books on the table and they will just move themselves around. The reason it not being done sometimes just one-on-one is that it still gives the opportunity for oracy. It still gives the opportunity for children to talk about each other's work in a constructive way, and then leaving them little post-its. So what's really lovely is they pop their post-it notes in their books, and the children might not see it till the next session, and it's really great for them to open it up and just to see what they did well, constructive feedback for next time, what might help them the next time. And obviously kindness is always encouraged. But yeah, and then what this does then is it feeds into their kind of the success criteria of the learning objective. Have they hit everything? And if not, it gives them that opportunity to kind of comment on it, to make sure that they're getting it next time. But like I said, we are still on a bit of a journey with peer marking because it's not quite consistent at the moment, but we appreciate our journey is also not finished. So I'm just gonna briefly, there's 2 or 3 puzzle pieces I've commented on, but there's no slides for, just like the editing and reviewing and the modelling and of specific writing. But I just wanted to kind of share with you what our planning looks like. And I've got an example of a year 1 plan and an example of a year 5, 6 plan. So we've been on a bit of a journey with our planning here for literacy also, and a lot has changed since our new head teacher joined us in 2022. And we found before this, our planning could be quite onerous. And as much as we know that we needed to make sure we were having the skill coverage, we know we needed to make sure we were covering what we had to do. But we wanted to, and our head was very keen to make sure our energies were put in the right place, and that although our plan was necessary for us to teach and for someone to be able to pick that up and know exactly what those children needed to do, it was making it workable for us, which is great. So this example here is just an example of a slide from a year 1 presentation, and we plan everything on slides or PowerPoint. And we will always include the date and the node, and these little symbols here. So these symbols here will cover the purposes, the 4 purposes. And what we do is we put them on the slides of where we feel those 4 purposes are covered in that session. So we know that we're not going to hit all 4 every single lesson of everything we teach every single day, but we know we need to make sure that we're covering that. So we've got a little logo for each, and we need to make sure, and we just ensure to make sure, ensure that the theme of that lesson is hitting ambitious and capable or enterprising, and to make sure that the children have a rich diet of that. And down here then we have these sort of cognitive, linguistic, physical and social skills. So again, we pop these on when relevant just for us really, so that we know that we're having that coverage, but we also share them with the children, so the children are getting familiar with these. The good thing with this is that children are then able to comment on specific skills. Oh, is this a cognitive skill we're doing? And the more confident they get with that, they are using that terminology then through the school. So just going back to the year one, this is obviously a response to text. It could be, what might the front cover look like? Where might the story be set? What do you think the story might be about? So they've obviously had to design a cover here for the story Spark the Dragon, and then they have come up with some questions for it. You've got some prediction skills here. They'll also have some oracy skills, and obviously their response to text. So this would have been a very early puzzle piece for this strand. And then the planning for a year 5-6 lesson is a little bit more detailed. So again, it still includes the date and our node, but you can see here that this is a hook lesson. So here, what's happened on what we just do on the slides, we just put a link to that hook. So this would have been something from the literacy shed, so a lovely piece of music to just have that emotive response from the children. And then from that, then they've had this template on their tables, which they've then had to fill in. We find the planning a lot easier. The planning is just necessary. It's what's needed. We have on there the skill coverage, we have on there the nodes, and then what we do from these is that we just track it then in our medium-term plan to make sure that we're hitting what we need to do. As well as our planning, for literacy, to ensure the coverage, thinking back to our aims of this journey, was to ensure that we had the coverage of fiction and non-fiction, and just a variety of really good texts, so many lovely texts, and ensuring staff were not using the same ones year on year, and still having just good options to choose from, really. So Dawn Robertson, before she went off a few years ago, started Reading Spines. The Reading Spines were a great thing to start. It's taken us a little while to get them going, especially with a 2-year kind of rolling system of literacy texts, but they are complete and they're great. And we find them really helpful because, especially with staff moving year groups, and this, we don't have a lot of movement, but sometimes I'm going from year 2 to reception now this year. So these are great for me to be able to pick up reception's Reading Spine and see what texts have been covered previously. So by this time, you know that the children will be in 2 years ahead. So the children you'll have won't have covered this before. Sometimes with perhaps year 3 and 4 planning together, the reason we have a 2-year rolling is that they won't have that same diet. And what we do is, this is how short and snappy the Reading Spines are. It covers the title of the book, the genre, a short synopsis of the book, just so for somebody who's not familiar with it can just pick that up and see if this is necessary or if this is applicable for what they need it for. There's a hook idea in here, and some, perhaps in this section here, staff might put in what they did. It doesn't necessarily mean that's what you have to do, but for that particular cohort, that's what worked well, and that hook was what engaged those children. But what's great is that these documents are workable and that you can add to them. So if you then were to pick this up and think of another hook that you found was really effective, you could just add it on, and then previous or future year groups then, if they were to pick this up again, have more options. So it's kind of like a rolling document. And we put in there the writing opportunities. So this is the narrative retell using talk for writing, and then the instructional recipe writing. So this was for a year 1 class. So that's quite a nice final piece for a year 1 writing final piece. And then some oracy discussion opportunities. So this is kind of like everything's just in one little pocket here. Everything, you can pick this up and think, right, is this what I need for my topic? I'm doing celebrations. I need something to do with harvest. Is this good? And if not, there's others on there. So that there's dozens of books per sort of cycle, and they're good to kind of choose from. And then this is just an example here of a year 3-4 spine. and year 5, 6. So same again, we cover genre, the hook, writing opportunities, and RSC and discussion opportunities. And they're really helpful, and they're good to add to, and they're good to edit as we're going along. So yeah, it's almost at the end of our little journey. We know our journey isn't finished. We've come a long way, and it has been a real long time. And as we've gone through it, things have worked that we've kept and things haven't. And we've used bits of schemes that we find useful. And I think that's, as practitioners, we've just been reflective in that and gone, this works for our children. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means we have to cater for the children we have. And for example, those big read characters work really well for our children because they're physical, like people and animals, and that's what they kind of need. So that's why we've used that snippet of the big read characters and used it in a purposeful way for us. And you know, that might work at your schools, it might not, but that, you know, it's about dropping what you don't need and keeping what you do. So we know we've still got some steps to take before this, you know, before we feel that we're at another good sort of breathing spot. So our next steps that we're focusing on is genre coverage. So although the reading spines do highlight fiction, non-fiction, we want to make sure that we're covering lots of different genres. We want to make sure we've got inclusivity in there as well, diversity. So it's good for us to just kind of have an overview of what we haven't got yet. So that's something that, as my new role now kicks in when I'm back, that's something that I'll be looking into to make sure teachers are having that, so that children have a rich diet of that. Our other next step is to challenge individual next steps to grow aspirational learners. So not just accepting final pieces from children, pushing every single child, closing the gap on their understanding, challenging innovation, challenging trickier thinking, challenging more vocabulary, more complex vocabulary, and a real focus on our aspirational learners is what we're looking at. Develop peer marking. So going back to our peer marking slides, we still need a lot of work there on consistency, so that this can be something that the children do as second nature, so that it's not so structured for them every single time. So it's not just a physical activity they're doing, it becomes part of their vocabulary, so that they are able to have conversations with people next to them about what their journey is, to help each other out before they get to peer marking. So if they're in another stage before they get to a final piece, why are we only giving them the opportunity to give feedback right at the end? You know, as they get more confident, they, you know, would be able to feedback to each other as they go. And then developing their reading skills. So we know their reading skills feeds into writing. RSC reading and writing is part and parcel. Reading skills, we have children coming very low to us, and we do read writing at our school, and it's working really well. And we just are trying to really encourage family engagement with reading to almost help boost our reading skills with our children here. So just an example, we do reading cafes. So we invite parents in to read with the children. We explain to parents what's expected in terms of reading, you know, what core words they should know, what high frequency words we teach them, and what kind of books they should be reading at home, and just encouraging them to read at home as well, because that can really just feed into everything, their imagination, creativity, as well as just enjoying it. And we want them to enjoy it above anything, and we don't want these skills to become so onerous that they become a job for them. That we want them to really enjoy these texts, and that comes from like grown-ups modeling really like good reading and modeling like a love for reading. So that's where we're going with it. I'm sure I've missed lots out, and sorry if I've been a bit clunky, and I don't feel like a lot of the lingo's rolling off the tongue as easy at the moment. But thanks for joining, and I hope somebody can take something away from it, and hope you've enjoyed it. And yeah, happy to answer any questions if I can, if anyone's got any.
Fantastic, Becky. I mean, I haven't got any questions because you were so thorough. If that's clunky, I dread to think what you're like when you're on tip-top form. That was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Please, if anybody has any questions or comments that you'd like to unmute and ask Becky, it's a good time to do it. And what I'll do is I'll stop the recording just in case that's putting anybody off.